All right, so today we're going deep on Gustav Mahler. You know, the composer who created these symphonies that are like worlds unto themselves. We're basing our exploration on an episode of the Classical Crescendo podcast. And I'm excited to figure out like what makes his symphonies so unique and why they still kind of grab audiences over a century later.
Yeah, Mahler really pushes like what a symphony can even be. He wasn't just happy with, pretty melodies. He wanted to like capture the whole human experience.
Yeah.
And, his famous quote, "A symphony must be like the world. It must contain everything." He really, lived up to that ambition.
Yeah, that's quite the goal. And he was writing at such an interesting time, too, like the late Romantic period. It was a time of massive change.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was a time of like breaking free from all the old rules, all the structures. And you could really hear that in the music. Like composers were experimenting with more chromatic harmonies,
Yeah.
bigger orchestras, and like longer and more complex forms. It was really a bridge to modernism, that would define the 20th century.
Mhm.
And Mahler was like one of the key figures.
Yeah, and it wasn't just art that was changing. Mahler's own life had a lot of challenges. He faced anti-Semitism his whole career and experienced some real tragedies, including like the death of his daughter.
Absolutely. You can't separate the man from the music. All those experiences, the highs and the lows, they all ended up in his composition. So his symphonies are really personal, but they still speak to like universal themes that connect with people from all walks of life.
It's like we get to experience those emotions right with him. So we know he finished 9 symphonies, and a 10th was left unfinished. Where should we start?
Well, his Symphony Number 1, nicknamed Titan, that's a pretty good place to start. It's a real statement. And it kind of foreshadows a lot of the themes and techniques that he used later on.
I've read that it's incredibly evocative, especially that first movement. Like it's a sonic painting of nature waking up.
Yeah, you're right. Mahler uses instruments to make like a really vivid soundscape, for instance. He doesn't just include bird calls. He places them specifically within the orchestra to give a sense of space, like depth. It's as though you're standing in a forest, hearing the sounds of nature all around you.
That's amazing. I never thought about how the placement of instruments can be so powerful.
Yeah, it's one of the things that makes Mahler's orchestration so new. But there's more. In the third movement of Titan, he uses Frere Jacques, that children's song, and turns it into this jarring funeral march.
Wait, Frere Jacques, that's really unexpected.
Yeah. He puts the familiar and innocent with the somber and profound. It reminds us that life is full of contradictions, like joy and sorrow together.
So Titan establishes his style and introduces these deep themes right away. Then we move to Symphony Number 2, the Resurrection Symphony, which asks even bigger questions.
Yeah, in Resurrection, Mahler deals with life, death, and even the afterlife. It's a really moving piece, really emotional, and it pushes the traditional symphony in new ways.
I've heard he brings in voices for this one.
He does. In the last 2 movements, he has soloists and a whole chorus, weaving musical and textual elements together to make a truly monumental experience. He includes texts from the poet Friedrich Klopstock and even his own poetry.
So it's like this multidimensional work of art, combining music, poetry, and philosophy.
Exactly. Mahler was really involved in the intellectual and philosophical ideas of his time. And those ideas are all over his music. He was a true Renaissance man.
From the soundscapes of Titan to the philosophy of resurrection, it's clear that Mahler takes the symphony to another level. So where do we go next?
Well, in Symphony Number 5, we see Mahler exploring a journey from darkness to light, maybe mirroring his own struggles and his eventual triumph.
And I gotta ask about the famous Adagio from this symphony. It seems like everybody knows it, even if they don't really know Mahler.
Yeah, it's captivating. This movement, scored for strings and harp, is often called a love letter to his wife Alma. And the way he uses subtle shifts in harmony and dynamics to build tension and then release it, it's masterful.
Yeah.
No wonder it's been used in so many films and TV shows.
So we've gone from these bold beginnings in Titan to the deep questions about life and death and resurrection, and then a journey from darkness to light in Symphony Number 5. Mahler doesn't seem afraid of anything.
That's right. And his ambition gets even bigger in Symphony Number 8. It's called the Symphony of 1,000.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Just that nickname. Tell me more.
Well, it's called that because of how many people you need to perform it. Over 800 singers and 150 instrumentalists.
Wow, that's more people than live in my hometown.
Yeah, it's massive. And musically, it's in 2 parts. The first is a Latin hymn, Veni Creator Spiritus, invoking the Holy Spirit. And the second part is inspired by Goethe's Faust, specifically the scene where Faust is redeemed.
So it's like this fusion of sacred and secular, all on a massive scale.
Exactly. It's the peak of Mahler's artistic vision. celebrating the human spirit and its potential.
We've gone from these intimate expressions of love to this huge celebration of the human spirit. That's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has. And it's not over yet. In his last completed symphony, Symphony Not. 9, we find this work that's really personal and introspective, composed after his daughter died. As he was facing his own mortality, it's a deep meditation on loss, acceptance, and the fact that death is inevitable.
I heard the ending of this symphony is really powerful, even unsettling.
It is. The last movement just fades into silence, a silence that Mahler actually writes into the score. It's like he's taking us to the edge of existence and making us think about what comes next.
That's intense. It sounds like he's not just composing music. He's creating an experience that makes us think about these big questions about life and death.
Exactly. And that's what makes Mahler's music so interesting. He's not afraid to go into the depths of human experience, to explore the light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow. And he invites us along for the ride. So welcome back to our Mahler journey.
It's been a wild ride so far. We've talked about how Mahler's life, in like the late Romantic period and just his huge ambition, all of that kind of fueled his approach to composing.
Yeah, we've touched on some of his symphonies too, from Titan to the Resurrection and Symphony No. 5.
But I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's so much more to discover. Like one thing I find really interesting is how Mahler mixes philosophy and literary ideas into his music.
I've always wondered about that. How does he do it? Isn't music, by its nature, abstract? How can it express actual ideas?
That's where Mahler's genius comes in. He uses programmatic elements to tell stories, to paint pictures with sound, and to evoke specific emotions or concepts.
Okay, so I've heard that term before, programmatic elements, but can you remind me what it means exactly?
Think of it like a movie soundtrack. You know how the music swells with these dramatic strings when there's a tense scene? Or bursts with triumphant brass when the hero wins?
Right, the music adds another layer to the story. It guides our emotions.
Exactly. That's basically programmed music. But Mahler takes it to a whole other level.
So he's creating worlds in his music.
Yeah, exactly. He was really into writers like Goethe and Nietzsche, and he wove their ideas about life and death and, the human condition into the very fabric of his music.
So each symphony is like a story.
In a way, yeah. Mahler would sometimes give clues in the titles of movements or in his notes to hint at the ideas he was going for.
So we have to listen with our brains, too, not just our ears.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that makes Mahler so rewarding. It's smart and emotional at the same time.
I'm starting to get why people call his symphonies epic journeys.
They are. And one of the ways he guides us is through the leitmotif.
Ah, leitmotifs. Those are like musical themes that come back, right? They represent characters or ideas.
You got it. Think of Wagner's operas, where each character has their own musical signature. Mahler does that in his symphonies. He creates a kind of drama where themes are introduced and developed and transformed.
So we might hear a melody that's associated with joy or despair, and then hear it again later, but maybe changed a bit.
Exactly. It's like watching a character change in a story. Their theme might become more complex, or darker, or even merge with another character's theme.
This is so cool. It's like Mahler gives us a map, but we can still explore on our own.
Right. He guides us, but he also wants us to make our own connections.
So we've got these programmatic elements and leitmotifs and stories in the music. What else makes Mahler's symphonies so different?
Well, his use of instruments is pretty unique.
We talked about the bird calls in Titan and the massive orchestra for the Symphony of 1000, but I want to know more.
Mahler wasn't satisfied with the usual orchestra. He wanted to create new sounds, to expand the possibilities.
So he liked to experiment.
He did. He used instruments like mandolins, cowbells, even a hammer in his Sixth Symphony.
A hammer? What for?
It's supposed to sound like fate knocking at the door.
Whoa, that's powerful.
Right.
So he's using sounds from everywhere.
He is. From nature, from everyday life.
Yeah.
Even from symbols. And it's not just the instruments themselves, it's how he uses them.
What do you mean?
He would put instruments in weird places in the orchestra, or even have them play off stage.
Like surround sound.
Yeah, that's like a 3D soundscape.
This is blowing my mind. Listening to Mahler is a whole body experience.
It is. You don't just hear it, you feel it.
And I bet his use of dynamics is part of that.
Oh, absolutely. Mahler takes us on this roller coaster of volume, from whispers to roars.
It's like the whole range of human emotions.
Exactly. And he's so good at it, it never feels like too much.
I can see why some people find Mahler overwhelming. There's so much happening.
It's true. But that's also what's so great about it.
You got to work for it a bit.
but the payoff is worth it.
Okay, so we've talked about instruments and dynamics. What about harmony? Does he break any rules there?
Oh, yeah. This is where he really pushes the limits of the late Romantic style. He's hinting at what's coming in the 20th century.
So he's not just a master of the orchestra, he's an innovator too.
He is. He stretches tonality to its limits to create this feeling of unease and tension that reflects the anxieties of the modern world.
I've heard people say his music is dissonant.
It can be, but it's a controlled dissonance. He never loses sight of beauty.
It's like he's acknowledging the darkness, but he's still looking for the light.
Exactly. It's that tension that makes his music so interesting.
He's messing with our expectations.
He is. He's not afraid to break the rules.
And that creates a totally unique sound world.
That's a great way to put it. Mahler's music is like nothing else. It's its own world.
I definitely want to keep exploring. Anything else we should talk about?
Oh, yeah. We can't forget about Mahler's use of folk music.
Right. We mentioned those Austrian and Bohemian dances, but tell me more about how they show up in the symphonies.
Mahler was really connected to his culture, and you can hear it in his work.
So it's not just quoting folk melodies, it's deeper than that.
Yeah, it's the spirit of the music. The rhythms, the harmonies, the way melodies move. It creates a feeling of warmth.
So he's grounding these big symphonies in something familiar.
Exactly. And I think that's why his music is still popular. It's challenging, but it's also relatable.
It reminds us that even the most complex music can still speak to us on a human level.
Exactly. That's what makes Mahler so great. He blends the grand and the intimate, the intellectual and the emotional.
I think we've covered a lot.
We have. We talked about programmatic elements, leitmotifs, instruments, dynamics, harmony, and folk music.
And all of that makes his music so rich.
Yeah. And it shows that Mahler was more than just a composer. He was a visionary who wanted to capture all of human experience in his music.
I'm starting to get it.
And we're just getting started. Next time, we'll talk about why Mahler is still relevant today.
And we'll give some tips for listening to his symphonies for people who are new to Mahler.
Yeah, and we'll leave you with some thoughts on why his music is so important today.
Sounds good. Okay, so we've spent all this time, digging into what makes Mahler's music so special. We've explored his life and his approach to, symphony and all the different things that make his work stand out.
Yeah, like those programmatic elements and leitmotifs and all those crazy instruments he used. And even like how his own cultural background kind of comes through in the music.
Right, but here's the thing that keeps coming back to me. Why does Mahler's music still feel so relevant today? It's been over 100 years since he wrote it. What is it about these big, challenging symphonies that makes us want to keep listening?
It's a good question. And I think there are a few reasons. First of all, Mahler was amazing at capturing human emotions. He wasn't afraid to go to those dark places, to face grief and loss. But he also celebrated joy and love and the beauty of nature.
Yeah, you can totally feel those emotions in the music. It's like he's expressing those feelings that we all have, but maybe we can't put into words.
Exactly. His music connects with us because it speaks to something deep inside. It acknowledges the struggles of life, but it also offers hope.
And he doesn't shy away from the big questions either. His symphonies deal with life and death, faith and doubt, trying to find meaning in a world that can feel pretty chaotic.
Yeah, and those are the questions that make his music timeless. They're universal. Everyone thinks about them.
It's almost like Mahler is inviting us along on his own search for answers.
That's a nice way to put it. And I think that's why his music is so powerful. We feel like we're sharing that experience with him.
And it's not just the emotions, it's the way he creates these amazing sound worlds.
Oh, yeah. His symphonies are like these giant landscapes, full of surprises and beauty and power. He takes us on this journey.
That's what makes them so exciting to listen to. You always discover something new.
Yeah, and it's no surprise that his music has inspired so many artists, filmmakers, choreographers, writers. They're all drawn to the power of his symphonies.
That shows how deeply his music affects people.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're new to Mahler, maybe feeling a little intimidated by these big symphonies, my advice is just dive in.
Right. Don't be afraid to start with something familiar, like Adagietto from Symphony No. 5, or maybe try Symphony No. 1, Titan. It's a good introduction to his style.
The important thing is to be open to the experience. Don't worry if you don't understand everything at first. You'll get more out of it each time you listen.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
I like that. Remember, Mahler's music is a gift. It's a chance to experience the world in a new way, to feel deeply, to think critically, to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. If you're looking for music that challenges you and moves you, music that stays with you, then give Mahler a try.
It's been great exploring his music with you.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore the world of music and ideas.